welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Brianne Beebe and I am a high school math teacher. Every now and then I like to do a sit-down video that I just call a teacher chat, and usually I just share some experience that I've had that relates to other teachers. Today is going to be slightly different though, because I'm going to share something that's a lot more personal and maybe not as widely applicable as some of my other topics. I'm not even 100% sure that this video will ever get published, but I figured it's been on my mind. I've been considering doing this for a while, that it would at the very least be cathartic just to record the video. Usually for my teacher topics, I have what I want to say at least bulleted out, if not scripted, just so I make sure I get everything in the video and that I make everything very clear. That's not happening today. I'm just speaking and we'll see what happens. There's something that I've just had on my mind for a long time, and I've mentioned it in vlogs before, but I never ended up using that footage. I ended up taking it out just because I didn't feel like I wanted to explain everything that I would have to explain to be able to have that footage there and have everything make sense. I feel like if I at least do this video, I would be able to be a little bit more authentic and not have to take certain content out just because I haven't revealed certain information about myself yet. The weird thing is that if I put this video out there, I'm sharing this information with anybody that wants to watch the video, so countless strangers can know something that I haven't even shared with most of the people in my life. The only people that really know were my parents, brother, sister, my mother and father-in-law. We never even got to tell my brother-in-law about it. And then my principals knew at school, 4 of my colleagues, and about a dozen students, which is kind of an interesting part of the story, but I'll get there. Today's Monday, October 9th. It's Columbus Day. I have off from school and I'm very grateful for that. In January, I became pregnant with what would have been my first child, and at 11 weeks, I lost my baby. The hardest part was losing the baby at 11 weeks, just because I was waiting for that 12-week mark to start telling people, and I was getting excited thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to announce my news? And I wasn't going to do anything crazy, but I was just starting to think about, how am I going to tell this person and this person and this person? I started thinking about, how am I going to tell my students? Because if I did any kind of like cute announcement, it would have been for them. It wouldn't have been for social media. So I started planning these things, and then a week before I could tell anybody, that happened. So at the time that I was pregnant, it was Spirit Week for us, and our Spirit Week this past year actually lasted for like 3 weeks because of snow. Like literally, the pep rally had to keep getting pushed back, our battle of the classes had to get pushed back, and it wasn't just snow, there's also an issue with girls basketball. So the whole thing got dragged out, and my reality was that I would be staying after school very late, and I would be seeing my students more than my husband, and I wanted them to know just in case anything happened. And I really did preface it like, listen, if I get crazy with any of you, it's because I'm hormonal. And I explained, and they were so happy for me, and they were so sweet. And these students that I told, they weren't the students that I had in class, but they were my seniors that were in the class that I was advising at the time. We got pregnant in January. From the beginning, I was fearful of having a miscarriage. The year before, I suspected that I was pregnant and lost the baby at about 4 weeks. And there's no way to confirm this, and I don't know, it could very well just be in my head, but just call it women's intuition. I seriously thought I was pregnant. So I suspected that I was pregnant, miscarried right away, and they'd call that a chemical pregnancy, because usually you'd see it on a pregnancy test and then you get your period like nothing happened. So that's what I suspect happened, but there's no knowing for sure, and I'll never know for sure about that. But this past January, I went through a couple different tests just to make sure. I went to the doctor, it was confirmed, and then I had my ultrasound done at, I think, about 8 weeks, and I got it done early just because my doctor wanted me to feel more at ease, because she knew that I was anxious about having a miscarriage because of what I think happened the year prior. So I get my ultrasound done, and the woman really said very little to me, and because I never had to worry about that before, I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. I was hoping she'd point things out to me on the screen just to say what was going on. She did none of that. So my mom right away was like, okay, that's weird, because they definitely should have done that. And now it's kind of believed that the baby wasn't developing by that point. And when I went to the doctor, they said, your pregnancy is like 2 weeks behind schedule. But no one really said anything like, okay, there's something wrong here, like you're gonna lose the baby. And that kind of is what upsets me to this day. Is, I don't know, to me that sounds like there was something wrong right away and you knew it, but you played it off like everything was fine. So I just went through, I made it to 11 weeks. I had just rearranged my closet. Like, I started purchasing maternity wear kind of early just because I was having anxiety about what happens if I start showing early, and I had this thing where I didn't want my students that I was teaching to know before I was ready to tell them. My seniors I was okay with because they understood how to be discreet and they're more mature and everything, so I was fine with them knowing, but I didn't want the students that I taught to know, just in case something like this happened. So I think that was one of the things that devastated me the most, was I had just started making adjustments in my home for the future that I thought I was going to have. So one night I start getting cramps, and it freaks me out a little bit because they're like menstrual cramps, and I'm like, okay. So, you know, I start doing online searches to see if it's normal or not, and some women do experience cramping. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's not that bad. I'll just, you know, see what happens. So I slept on it, went to work, was fine most of the day, had a little bit of cramping. Later that night though, the cramps got a lot worse, and I started spotting, which freaked me out. So I called the doctor, like my emergency urgent care or something, I don't even remember. I called someone and asked what happens, like what to do, and they said if you're spotting, that can be normal for some women, so don't worry about it, but if it gets heavier, come into the emergency room. So I tried to sleep that night. The next morning my bleeding was a lot heavier, so I went to the emergency room. Again, I'm not going to go into any excruciating details or anything, but I was bleeding very heavily. You know how you can get a song stuck in your head? To this day, I feel like I have the sensation of losing my baby stuck in my skin, because the moment that happened, I knew exactly what happened. Like, I knew that I lost it. On a teacher's note, I had sub plans, because we have to have 3 days of emergency sub plans. So I called our sub caller and let her know that I wasn't coming in for school that day at like 5:30 before I got to the emergency room while I was on my way there. And then I emailed my department chair and just kind of gave her the rundown of, can you put my emergency sub plans out on my desk, and can you, for my one class I was going to have them take a test. I'm like, the test is in this drawer, could you take it out and have it ready for them for the sub? And she obliged, which I'm very grateful for. And then I texted my kids, because I use the Remind app, and I just let them know, I'm not going to be here today, but you know, good luck on your test. And I think there was like maybe one thing I had to tell them, so I let them know that way. I stayed out of school for 2 days. And my seniors, because I'd known them for a few years and I'd worked closely with them, they knew that something was wrong, because I'm never absent. And when I am absent, it's like, okay, well, all the other teachers are absent too, because we have some kind of meeting. So when they realized I was gone, but their teachers were all there, I started getting text messages from my officers or emails from some of my non-officers, just kind of checking in and saying, is everything okay? Are you all right? And the ones that like knew about the baby were a little bit more concerned. So I feel like in, you know, 30 years from now, I'm never going to forget that I had students that cared enough to just check in. So after that happened, and I returned to school, I did a pretty good job keeping it together. It was hard because I had to tell some people that, you know, what happened, and Some people I didn't tell anything about it until after that happened. The only people that knew that I was pregnant was my department chair and my principals, because I had to leave school one day for a doctor's appointment, and that's like not who I am. Like I always go out of my way to schedule my doctor's appointment for after school if it's possible. And this time it wasn't, so I just said, listen, I'm pregnant, I have to go to a doctor's appointment. I tried to make it after school, but I can't, and that's when I told my principal. So they knew about it, so I had to come back and tell them what happened. So that was tough. My students that knew about it, because I told some of them in email or over text, they knew about it and they told the other students just so that I didn't have to, which I'm very grateful for. So that was kind of taken care of. And then just as far as teaching goes, what I've always loved about teaching is that it doesn't really matter some of the things that are going on in my life, but when I'm teaching, nothing else is affecting me. I'm just so focused on what I'm doing. Like I could be hungry, I could have to go to the bathroom, I could be feeling a little bit sick, but once I'm teaching, like none of that stuff is bothering me because I have a job to do. So teaching actually helped a little bit with basically just giving me a distraction. And I'd say grieving a miscarriage is not quite the same as grieving someone that you've lost, because I never got to meet my baby, and I'm grieving what could have happened. Like I'm grieving a future that didn't come to pass, because I don't know anything about how my baby would have turned out. I don't even know if it would have been a boy or a girl or anything like that. So I don't know, it's different. So I think the biggest thing to just know and to like remember is that everyone's going to have something happen to them in their life that is a horrible experience. And while it's easy to compare and say, well, I lost this person and that's worse than you losing your unborn child, it's my experience, it's not yours. So right now this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So when it comes to teaching, for the most part, it's a welcome distraction, because I just personally am kind of a workaholic. So it's helped, because I've had other situations where I've lost older relatives and it was sad, but teaching kind of helped me stay okay. I had a situation happen in my family at the beginning of last school year, and it's still ongoing, but it's really not my story to tell. It just kind of affects me. I think that was the worst thing that had to go through while teaching until this happened. So for the most part, I'm okay until I hit a milestone, like when I hit what would have been my 4th month or what would have been my 5th month. Especially the 5th month, because that's around the time when you find out what you're having. That was tough. Going through the summer was a little bit tough just because I had downtime, and every now and then it would hit me that by that point I should have had like a belly about a certain size. So like I said, everyone's grief is going to be different, and with this grief, I feel like I grieve on and off, and what ends up hitting me is the milestones. That's the reason why I'm so glad that I don't have school today. Because today was my due date. And as this day was approaching last week, it started getting harder to hold it together, because I would just randomly remember, like in the middle of the day, during a prep, luckily, not during a class, because during classes I'm too focused, but it would hit me and I would have to find a way to distract myself so that I didn't get like this and then have to teach. Usually in a teacher chat I like to give some kind of advice, and I don't know that I really have advice on dealing with this, because everyone's going to be different. Everybody's grief is different. Just from a teacher standpoint, I would give the advice of just always have something in place, because you never know what could happen. You always need to have some kind of emergency sub-plan. And then what I even started doing this year is, if I prep an activity and then just end up not getting to it for whatever reason, and I've already made the copies, I just put them in my subtub in the extra folders that I have in there. just as backup, just in case. Because even if it's something like a last minute thing where I'm like, okay, they need to do this, but I'm unexpectedly being taken out of the classroom for some reason, I have that there and ready to go without actually using up a day of emergency sub plans. Teaching can be emotionally draining, and you really have to take care of yourself, because if you are going through something like this, you're not going to have anything left to give to your students. So it's just, you know, preaching self-care and just preparation. Now my nose is stuffed and I sound crazy. This whole experience though has also been like a good reminder that I do my best, but sometimes there are things that are like gnawing at me on the inside, and I have to put on like a brave face and just do what I gotta do, because I have students that are depending on me. It's important to remember that the same exact thing is, I mean, maybe not the same exact situation, same type of thing applies to your colleagues, your administration, and your students, because everyone is just a person and they're all going through their own stuff, and it's not going to be the same thing that you're going through. And while, you know, they could open up to you about it and you might feel like, okay, well, I could handle that better or differently, like it's not that big of a deal to me, everyone's going to have their thing that really gets to them, and it's gonna be different for everybody. So it's never our place to judge, and we just have to do our best to just be compassionate toward those that are in some kind of suffering, because I mean, you just never know. That's why I really like that quote, be kind to everyone you meet, for you never know the battle that they're fighting, or something like that. I'll look it up. The quote is, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. And you don't always know about it, and it's usually none of your business to know about it. So just, you know, just be kind. I love that. And I think it's true for our students, administrators, colleagues. You just never know what's going on in someone else's life. And while they could tell you about some things, and maybe for you it doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, to them it could be like the world is falling apart. All right, so good luck to me on editing this and finding the courage to post it. That's everything for this video. I'm really sorry if it was really sad and depressing for you. My hope is that it could be comforting to someone and possibly helpful, which is why I make the videos that I make. I just want to help other teachers, because it's quite the unique experience being a teacher. So it always feels good to know that you have other people that kind of have your back or understand you or know what you're talking about. I'm certain I'm not the only teacher that's gone through this either, so I wanted to make a video. And if you're going through grief, especially pregnancy loss grief, you're not alone, and I'd appreciate hearing from you in the comments. And that's everything for the video, so I'm going to end it here, and as always, thank you for watching.